Hey, what's up? My name is Mike Haranica from the Devil Wears Prada, and you are watching Heavy New York.
Heavy, 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 heavy New York.
What's up, everybody? It's Alex from Heavy New York. We are back at the Gramercy Theater, and we got round two with Mike of the Devil Wears Prada. Great to have you back.
Thanks, man. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it feels like deja vu. We were sitting in this exact spot during the With Roots Above and Branches Below anniversary tour, and now we're back in this exact spot.
Yeah, it kind of goes that way with venues, too. Like, we play the exact same rooms in some cities. Like, we play the Bottom Lounge at the same time every year. This will be a few years now at Gramercy, but yeah, good to be back, man.
Yeah, it's great to be back. So the newest album is The Act. Absolutely great record. You just want to give like a brief run on how the making of this record was, the recording, all that fun stuff?
So the writing process was entirely different as far as all of us working kind of one-on-one with John rather than everybody in a room piecing things together. John is definitely the captain of the act, the one that controlled and handled and produced everything to a T, and even credited songwriter too. So a lot of it came down to John. First time we've ever actually thrown away songs. We always just make like the bare minimum. We threw away a lot of songs this time around, and we recorded it in April, I want to say, of this year outside Boston.
Okay. You ever worried that the songs you throw away are going to be on like a B-side record and just be the biggest hit you guys ever had?
No, I think we were, some of us I think were more connected to some of the songs thrown away than others. I wasn't super connected to, besides like one of them that I still credit as being worthwhile, but at the same time I'm not like bent out of shape or by any means as far as like, oh, that didn't make the record. So I don't know. I don't think any of them would even be worth a B-side. I wanted B-sides, but it was just like, well, these just aren't as good as the record, so why spend the time on them? So
It'll be
no
a
B-sides.
It'll be a bonus track in Japan somewhere.
We'll see.
Yeah. Now, I remember last year when we spoke, you said you were going to try to do something very different for this record, which it clearly, like, I think that this sounds very different than, like, Plagues or With Roots Above and Branches Below and all that. Was it a preconceived idea, the way that, like, people are hearing the record, the way that this record came out? Was this the exact sound that you were going for?
I think so. I mean, we're extremely critical and nitpicky about our sound and mixes. The mixing process for our band is thoroughly long-winded as far as critiques and whatnot. So, yeah, we're not going to put something out that we're not fully behind. And even looking back at stuff we did put out that we look back on regrettably, I think The Act is the sort of antithesis of that, and the more important point being a record we can really stand behind, which is so crucial when you're 14 years in and it's your 7th full length.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I thought that this record was very experimental, too. Like, I feel like every song played by its own rules and stood out in its own right. I'd imagine that you guys like to experiment with your sound as much as possible and take a new approach to everything, right?
Yeah, I'm always reluctant about the term experimental. I thought it got really worn out, so I never really aim that way. I think it's just looking at a metal record or a heavy rock record or whatever the record is and looking at it more from a musician standpoint rather than as like a metal guitarist or a metal drummer or a metal vocalist perspective. As far as building songs out of that which we can use and that which is applicable to our sound, which is a world of components rather than just guitars, and just a few patches of certain synths, So I think a lot of the looping on the record and the sampling is a lot of what could be considered more on the experimental side versus, listening to a metal record that's, hey, here's the 2 guitars, here's the bass, here's the drums, here's the vocals, Yeah. And I think a lot of metal has gone really far from that, too, to a higher level of production. But the level of production is also just entirely repetitive, and it's using the same components over and over rather than going to instruments and sounds that are just entirely foreign to metal. Yeah. And I think that when John and Kyle, the primary songwriters of the record, when they were sending over instrumentals, that's how it rang to me.
Yeah. Well, kind of like you led me into the next question because, like, I could tell, like, and this could just be me being like a very, advocate listener of you guys, but like, if you play me 30 seconds of a song, I could tell that that's off of With Roots Above and Branches Below, that's off of 818, that's off of Transit Blues, etc. So, like, I'd imagine. I know that you don't really look back at your earlier material with like the most flattering of critiques, but I'd imagine they are like representative of who you and Jeremy and everybody else in the band were at that time, right?
Yes, certainly. But I think that at least at this point in our lives, things change so much from when you're 16 to 30 years old. And I've never been apologetic about my level of sincerity, particularly in the early songwriting and whatnot. But people change, and I don't know. And a lot of the times playing music or touring is a 9 to 5 job. It's work. And when you indoctrinate songs that don't feel emotionally cathartic or representative of yourself today, it's like just doing a job you don't like, Yeah. So there's definitely a standard to meet as far as pleasing people that love that old stuff, and we play a Plague song on this tour.
Hey, John, what's your name again, right?
It is, yes, which I know isn't not a deep cut by any means, but yeah, at the same time, we like to our sense of creating something, just playing a lot of stuff that doesn't emotionally resonate is just a waste of time for me. I feel like I could find a different job that would challenge me and fulfill me more than playing old stuff that doesn't ring as true to me.
Yeah. When it comes to like getting inspired to write, does like inspiration like come out of nowhere sometimes for lyrics, or do you have to like put yourself in a certain element in order for like the creativity to flow through?
With Prada, it's sometimes and oftentimes even a bit forced as far as like, okay, like there's a deadline to meet and there's a time to work on the song. But at the same time, usually earlier on the record, like some ideas just flow. Just like I remember one of the first songs we wrote for the record was Please Say No. And I think that was one of those like 25 minutes with a notebook and the thing's done. It's all there. Like you piece it together. John and I go about the vocals and we, work Jeremy in and make the song what it is over top of his instrumental with Kyle. And then there are songs that like, how many hours can I stare at this notebook till I have that last piece of that verse or whatever? So it's different. And for me, like while writing is always very impulsive and always comes at spontaneous moments in my day, writing Prada songs is a stricter guideline and a stricter kind of disciplined act of writing. So sometimes I've got to force myself into the zone.
Discipline in terms of lyrical matter or like in terms of vocal style?
More, I think, lyrical matter. I think that also to reference Please Say No, like the what's happening vocally in that song has to be that way. Like there's no other kind of vocal style to represent the lyrics and the subject matter other than that. Like I wouldn't be able to sing the song anyway but the way it is. So I think as far as the discipline with writing the lyrics and then performing them and everything that comes with that these days, it used to be that simple. Here's the lyrics, here's it as on the song, song's done. These days it's very, very much different as far as having a more vocal forward collection of songs and basically almost working backwards a lot of the time to get the instrumental a little more to work with the vocal and then enhance the song's narrative. So with all that, I think that's the kind of discipline of what's happening with what you're speaking of on a Prada song, which is one of the hard things for me is like I write about things that just never could be sung over a Prada song. So a part of me having to force myself to get into that zone is to write something applicable to the sound, and that's the discipline, I think.
And I think that's why you probably put out the God Alone project too, because
that's
like
exactly right.
I didn't know it was. I was listening to the record before I like read about it, and when it said this features Mike of Divorce Spot, I'm like, really? I thought this was Greg Puciato or something like that. So
yeah, I like to exercise my independence and my freedom to write in a number of different facets of my life. And as far as musical concerns, that which just doesn't work at all on Prada goes to, for a while, we haven't done anything God Alone in a while, but kind of went there, and I think it actually ended up enhancing Prada as well because I found more confidence in my vocal to be able to
Definitely
play.
heard that in the new
Yeah,
record.
so like just like spoken word mumbly stuff, which is the music I personally appreciate so much. I found my stride with that in creating God Alone, and then when we're writing Prada songs, and there are these moments like in towards the back of the thread or towards the back of Lines of Your Hands, like I'm confident in being able to perform that and to write that way, and for John and I were to work together and him to know that I'm capable of doing that.
Yeah. And also, like, in terms of vocals, we're beating the vocal concept to death, but, like, what I find unique is I've always thought that you and Jeremy's vocals are very prevalent, like, especially when you look at songs like Ben Has a Kid or Gimme Half or something like that. Like, do you guys, when it comes to, like, recording the vocals or anything like that, do you guys, or even, I don't know if he writes any of the vocal or the lyrics at all, but, like, do you guys have to be on, like, the same page in terms of both contributing vocals?
Not so much. Jeremy and I vocally work together like it couldn't be easier. Like John is these days so much the hub of that as far as John actually wrote a few of the songs for the record lyrically, which has never happened in Prada. And one of them, Wave of Youth, was a song that Jeremy contributed. But again, it was another one of those like one-on-one situations where I wasn't there. I don't know who wrote. Doesn't matter. What matters is the quality of the song. So, yeah, I mean, we kind of I go to John with lyrics and whatnot, and he applies them and makes melodies with Jeremy, and he does that, and I do my thing. And, I've been complimented before on Jeremy and I have been complimented before on our voices working well together, but I listen to like With Roots Above, and I feel like there's such a clash there that it's
Come on, don't shit on Ben Has a
I-
Kid,
I-
man.
No, and like I think they contrast each other constantly, and now I think on the act there are moments of contrasting, but there are also so many layers of Jeremy quietly underneath me
Yeah.
on these certain verses, and that's a bit of harmony there that didn't exist. And I think that's also using and representing all of your musical components to make the best project or the best thing you have, you know?
Definitely. I saw multiple sides of all members, not just your vocal style, but in terms of the guitars and the way Jeremy contributed vocal. It just like when you said you were doing something different, like you really stuck to your word with it. So
Yeah, it was all really founded on John and Kyle starting to jam together and Kyle having a ton of demos, and they just threw dozens and dozens of them away. Just like, this is Transit Blues Round 2. Like, this is a song that could have been there. And I think Lines Your Hands, which we consider like the middle ground song, might have been able to be on Transit Blues, I guess. But the goal is to create a new entity as a record. And I think that's certainly important when fans can be quickly exhausted as far as having so much Prada to listen to. Like, if they're going to listen to more of it, it better be different.
yeah, of course. And I have two more questions for you, but seeing you live is a completely different experience than just listening to the album. The way that there's crowd interaction, the movement on stage, and everything like that. Like, I knew what song was coming on the Roots anniversary tour, and still, I still found it completely unpredictable. So, like, for you, is there a completely different energy in executing your material live than when you're like in the vocal booth or in a studio or in songwriting mode?
It always was that way, but honestly nowadays not so much. I think so far the songs that we play 4 songs from the act on this tour, and that's all we've played from the record live so far, or in a live setting. And with that, like, I feel that actually these songs require a certain precision that others didn't. Like, I've always loved seeing a band play songs and them to take liberties and to work a little differently off the record. I think there are still moments where I intentionally do that with the act songs, but the level of like tightness we've instilled into our band is just at like a very much heightened level. Like, I don't think we were ever the sloppiest live band, but there are certainly even a few short years ago where we would have looked at that now and said, like, that's shitty. Like, it's got to be better. Like, the people seeing the show need the set needs to be tighter. So with that I think that's kind of instilled into my brain. It was actually entirely involuntary. It really came with the rest of the band instrumentally tightening up so much together that once I started playing these songs, I realized that it requires a certain I don't know. I'm trying to think of something along with like precision or something along.
Enigma.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know. They exist very much differently in a live setting, and hopefully all in a positive light too. I think that there's something very emotionally explosive about certain moments of the songs we perform. So not to be up my own ass, but
There you go.
it's for the concert attendee to decide. So.
And the final question I wanted to ask you is, I think I've from talking to you on 2 occasions now, I've always admired like your honesty and your ability to look within yourself and say this is not going to work in this. At what point are you satisfied? Like, how do you know when a song is like done, that this is the way that you want it to be?
I mean, in Prada, like it's so much like I'm so. Prada is an entity more than a band or this member or that member. And I know, Jeremy, Andy, and I have been at it forever and original dudes, but I don't know. With that being said, like we're also work together as a whole rather than one man for himself. That I think that it's just a very democratic sort of agreement when Prada songs are complete. In other facets of my life, there is a certain difficulty with concluding something. Sometimes I think I often leave things too unfinished. But then in Prada, a lot of the times I think they're overly finished. I think that leaving it a little bit more uncut is better. So I don't know. It comes to taste, but it exists in harmony for Prada because we all go about the band as not being as like mine, but ours.
Yeah.
So when something is concluded or a song is complete, it usually exists as that, and there's never used to be, but these days it's never like, oh, I hate this dude because he had to add that part in there and I didn't want it there. Something like we can all very much collectively agree when a song is complete.
Awesome. And overthinking stuff could be like the worst like thing you could ever do. So
Especially for something it's not mathematic, it's creative.
yeah.
So I think that's when the overthinking can be detrimental to something's wholeness or rawness, for sure.
Especially if you're trying to capture a moment, like the moment's gone if you keep trying to recreate that moment and everything like that.
Indeed.
Yep. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for coming back on Heavy New York. Is there just anything else you would like to promote for the act? It's a brand new record cycle, so I'd imagine we'll be seeing a lot of you.
Yeah, and we actually were very decidedly going to tour on this one a little more than we have in the past. Really no ambitions to make any more music. Certainly not anything like full length or anything. So we're just going to hammer it out as much as we can the next 2-3 years. We put out a Chemical music video. People can check it out online. But we're going to do another video, but we don't know what song for. Mm-hmm. So to anyone interested that wants to weigh in for their favorite song outside of the singles we've already released, we'll be doing another video. We just don't know what. And everyone keeps telling us Numb, so that seems to be the leading candidate. But yeah, we'll see. Maybe as early as next year, another music video or whatever. And we will be touring early next year, too. I can't say what the tour is, but we'll be back in New York in no time.
Yeah. Thank you. I forgot to mention this will be uploaded by midnight, so please,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, if you have tour scheduled for 2021, please don't say it here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, true. Yeah, well, we'll announce that early next year, next month or something.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Everybody, we are here with Mike of The Devil Wears Prada, The Act. Pick that up if you haven't already. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We'll see you next time.